Is a 135mm lens for you? I say yes, but please hear me out, as a 135mm prime is not for everybody and can be very challenging to use. Hey there, what's going on? My name is Jason Herman. I'm a pro photographer, YouTuber, licensed drone pilot, father of 2 amazing humans, plus my 4-legged friend Buddy. So when it comes to a higher focal length fast prime lens, the user difficulty level tends to go up. With a 135mm focal length, you will need to be further away from your subject, which can make it harder to connect and get that perfect expression you are after. Also, because you have no zoom, it's a fixed prime, it's all up to your feet and physical movement for framing the shot. So you're going to need to physically move or have your subject move. These 2 factors in particular are why, in my opinion, the fixed length 135mm prime can be a lot more challenging than, let's say, a 70 to 200mm zoom lens or even an 85mm prime. The zoom makes things easy, and an 85mm lens will allow for much more wiggle room with you and your subject. The 135mm, however, is way more precise of a tool and requires more planning, which can make it harder to execute in the moment, sort of thing. This is why a lot of wedding photographers prefer zooms, because the time it takes to frame a shot is critical for capturing the moment and being ready for it. With a prime, you would either be in the right spot or not, and you'd have to physically move. Like I said earlier, you'd have to capture the perfect shot. You're gonna have to move around, oftentimes missing the critical moment. What I used to do at weddings back in the day is take the 135mm lens out at the reception time once I already got all the hero shots with the 70 to 200mm. Then I would take my time and play with the 135 to try to get a few of those magical captures. If possible, like these frames you see here, candids are my absolute favorite at a wedding, and towards the end of the reception you can really get some killer shots, people laughing, smiling, and so forth. For portraits, the 135 was quite a bit easier to use than weddings because I could plan the shootout and location ahead of time, ensuring I had enough space in front and in back of the subject, for that killer separation and framing required. Now, the depth of field with a 135mm f1.8 lens is so incredibly razor thin that this can also be a challenge. If you want to shoot wide open at f1.8 for maximum background blur, you must have the focal plane perfect if you want both eyes to be sharp, like this. Now, what I mean by focal plane is the same exact distance from the lens, so the eyes would need to be looking perfectly straight at the camera with no head turn left and right. If the head is turned, then only one eye will be like tack sharp in focus, like this example here, versus when both eyes are looking straight ahead. You can see now both eyes are nice and sharp. If your subject does not have eyes, it makes it a lot easier to get some fun depth of field play sort of shots for a huge variety of subjects. In particular, flowers, food, products, landscapes, cars, and detail shots of all kinds. I also enjoy using the 135mm focal length for sports, even though it is a bit more challenging without the zoom of like a 70 to 200, for example. The faster max aperture really helps separate the subject. In lower light, it really helps keep the shutter speed nice and fast with a lower ISO value for cleaner shots. Now, with all that being said, what I love about the 135mm more than anything is that killer 3D pop you can get, which creates incredible subject isolation / separation, which really makes for next level portrait lens, in my opinion. I love using the 135mm for pets, and I used to use it a lot for portraits, engagement shoots, and weddings, although it was noticeably more challenging as subjects moving can be difficult to capture with a lens like this. Remember, not having a zoom means you have to zoom with your feet. This is why most people go for the high quality zoom lenses like the 70 to 200 f2.8 or the 28 to 70 f2, for example. That gives you so much more flexibility when you have to get the shot, at critical situations. Now, back in the day, I used to use my Canon EF 135mm f2 lens, as you can see here. I actually sold this lens to my good friend Aldo, but borrowed it back to use on my R5 Mark II I got over here. And I also wanted to use it for this video. At the time when I got this lens back in the day, it was one of the sharpest lenses ever made by Canon. And since then, I have moved on to using mostly Sony gear, and I have used the incredible, now old school 135 f1.8 Sonar Zeiss lens for the A-mount Sony cameras back in the day. And I've also extensively used the new Sony 135mm f1.8 GM lens, which is incredible. The older Zeiss lens, which I reviewed here, by the way, was incredible optically, but it had the old gear-driven autofocus that went through the camera body, so it's not good for high-speed subjects, although it could still be used requiring a little more skill, you know, you're going to get less of a hit rate. The newer Sony FE 135mm f1.8 GM lens has lightning fast autofocus plus incredible optical performance. It does not disappoint when it comes to separation, sharpness, color, depth of field play, and so on. Now, as awesome as the Sony 135mm GM lens is, it goes for about $2,100 US retail, which is not exactly cheap or affordable to most people, unless you're a working professional that can justify the cost. So this is where the new Viltrox 135mm f1.8 lab lens comes into play, as it's about half the price of the Sony, and for most situations offers very similar performance based on my extensive testing. The sharpness is off the charts on this lens, the background rendering is gorgeous, and the autofocus works excellent as well. Now, the lens did hunt a few times when near the minimum focus distance, but that is an extremely hard test, and lots of lenses have that problem. Only the Sony lenses seem to have that edge in the minimum focus distance area based off all the lenses I've tested in recent years. So again, at that minimum focus distance, non-Sony lenses tend to struggle a little bit. But in every other scenario, this lens worked great. Now, for those on a really tight budget, Samyang or Rokinon also offers a 135mm f1.8 lens. Pretty darn good, but does not have the same insane sharpness and contrast that the Viltrox offers. It also has some distortion and noticeable vignetting, whereas the Viltrox has none that I could see. In addition, the autofocus is not as fast or accurate with moving subjects. However, it is lighter weight and still a great option for the money if you can deal with the less overall quality and features. So for those interested, I'm now going to break down the new Viltrox lens hands-on style, and then I'll show you some of the sample photos and lab test shots I got with this beast. I just want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video, which is you. You guys are the sponsor of this video. That's right. You guys are the ones that are watching the video. You guys are the ones asking questions and commenting below. But you guys are also the ones going into that description area, clicking the affiliate links, which greatly helps me out, and I really appreciate it. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up as well. And thank you for sponsoring this video. So just going over the specs of this beast, we have full frame, of course, f1.8 to f16. On an APS-C camera, it's going to be about 202.5 millimeters effective. This lens has dual hyper focus motors, which makes it very quick for moving subjects, which is really nice. It's got multi-layer nano coatings. It's weatherproof. It's got a nice rubber gasket on the back here. Dust and splash resistant design. It's got the custom buttons here. There's one here and there's another one over here you can program. It's got a focus limiter switch here, which is great if you're like shooting through a fence or something like that. The front lens element is 82 millimeters. It actually comes with a nice lens pouch as well. The minimum focus distance is 2.36 feet or 72 centimeters. So that actually gives you a 0.25 magnification, which is very good, which basically means how close you can get to your subject, how large it'll be. So you can get very close with this lens. Now, this lens also has 14 elements in 9 groups, has an 11 blade rounded aperture, which is awesome. This lens has very little focus breathing as well. And it's got a magnesium alloy construction. It's very impressive. It's the lab edition here. So Viltrox went all in on this lens. Now, it also has a really nice lens hood here. It's got this like rubber lip, and the inside of it has like that, I don't know, like felt type stuff. Now, the manual aperture ring on this lens is kind of weird. You could hear it there. So you can turn the click on and off, which is nice, but it doesn't have like dedicated stops, you know? So when you turn it, when it's on, it is a little strange. It takes a little bit of getting used to. You can see this manual aperture ring here. Pretty interesting how it works. So you can see it's changing the aperture, and if you go all the way, it'll just stay on auto. So I have it on auto right now, and you can change it. I actually prefer the click so I know that I'm changing this. But if you just go all the way to the left like that, it'll be on auto, and then you can control the aperture from the camera. So what it's telling you there is the focus distance, and that's where the focus currently is, and you can change that here. So that's the minimum focus distance, 0.72. And you can actually customize this screen if you want. So you can use, there's like a Bluetooth Viltrox app, and you could like put your custom little logo in there or put text if you want. It's an interesting feature if you're into that sort of thing. And also what's cool is if the camera's off and you turn this, nothing's gonna happen. Like on a regular aperture, it will change even if the camera's off, you know? So I keep calling this lens a beast because it weighs 2.7 pounds or 1,235 grams. That's very heavy. and it cost about $900 US, which is a very, very good value. Now, one thing you'll notice, when this is on, it's silent. When I turn it off, like this, hear that? That's the focus elements moving around in there. I'm sorry for the rolling shutter jello here from the overhead, but that noise, I don't like that. That's the focus elements moving in there. It's not really that big of a deal. A lot of lenses have elements that move inside, but this one kind of clunks. So I just don't particularly like that. Once it's on, that stops. Like the elements are like, they have, you know, electricity going to it or power, so they don't do that. But when it's off, you might hear that. That's normal. But like I said, I just don't really like it. It sounds just a little bit too clunky. So it just is what it is. I mean, that's, I guess, personal preference, but that just seems like over time that might lead to wear. The focus ring also feels nice and buttery. Very, very smooth. It does have a little bit of play in the left and right direction, but just very, very minor. When you spin it though, it's super smooth. And just to be clear, these buttons feel very good as well. Like the tactileness of these buttons feels good. They don't feel like cheap or flimsy or anything like that. The other thing I forgot to mention was the USB-C port on the back here for firmware updates. All right, so let's go into Adobe Lightroom here. I want to show you some of the test photos I got with the Viltrox lens. You saw a bunch of sample photos from 135mm over the years already that I showed you. So now I want to show you just what the Viltrox can do specifically. So let's get into it. All right, guys, so here we are in Adobe Lightroom, and first I just wanted to show you like what 135mm gets you. So just for a quick comparison here, like a visual, it's like how I learn visually. So this I think is perfect for those like, you know, not exactly sure what 135 will get you. So from the same exact position on a tripod, this is what 135mm looks like in the lab back here. So now watch when I put an 80, oh sorry, this is a 100mm lens on there. So 135mm, here's a 100mm. This is the TT Artisan's macro, by the way. Now here's 85mm. This is the Sony 85mm. Now here's the Sony 55mm Zeiss lens. Now here's a 35mm lens. Here's a 20mm lens. And here is a 16mm lens. This is the Viltrox 16mm. So this is ultra wide angle 16mm, right? You can see how small the quarter is. And if we just go back, look at this. 20mm, 35, 55, 85, 100, 135. So you could just see like the 135mm is so much telephoto compression that the background, you know, the bokeh balls in this case just blur out like into these gigantic bokeh balls, which is really cool. So let me show you some of the real world sample photos. All right, you guys know I love to shoot food, you know, take photos of food and stuff. And honestly, this lens is awesome for food photography. The only problem is you have to, you know, you have to be pretty far away. Like you can't be that close. So when you're at a table at a restaurant, it's kind of hard to use. But if you have room to step back, which I did here with this bagel, this pretzel bagel thing, just look at this. I mean, this is just top quality optics right here. This is like GM level optics, Sony GM level. It's unbelievable how sharp and crispy this lens is. So I have one other more boring shot I just wanted to show you here, but just look at this high contrast scene. And you can see it's like absolutely flawless. There's like nothing at all to point out about this shot that's not good. Look at the foreground bokeh rendering, looks great. Just this ugly tree branch and everything. So here's just another one with the coffee cup here, so you can see my actual coffee mug in the background, just that depth of field play. Now, I just took a couple of quick snapshots here, and I know I look a little crazy. I was trying to do it with the app on my phone and stuff. But if I zoom in, you could see just how insanely sharp that is, and the detail is just remarkable. You see how blurry my nose is? That's how narrow that depth of field is, and why it's so important that you have your eyes on the same focal plane if you want them both sharp. You could see here, now that I have my head turned a little bit, it picked the right eye, like from the camera perspective, so you could see the left eye is very blurry. And that's only with my head tilted a little bit. Again, product photography, take a look at this incredible, this Falcam Tree Root tripod, by the way, is the best tripod I've ever used to date. And I'm just working it. I like to use stuff for a really long time before I review it. But so far, I'm loving this thing. I've been using it for a few months. So you can see this shot, I wasn't in the best environment, but it doesn't matter. The background blurs out so effectively that you get like this crispy, unbelievable 3D pop. Like just look at the little adjustment wheel on the leg. And here you can see the foot. This rubber actually pops off and you have like this metal cleat underneath. And here's just another shot of the hook. But I'm just trying to give you guys an example of how you can really use this for different subjects. And in this case, just showing a tripod off. Remarkable how awesome it looks. Some savage dropped off all the candy at work and there's a big bucket of it. So let's take a look at some pizza shots here. You could see just the depth of field play. These were like sheet pan style pies. And, you know, I had it at f1.8 for that maximum depth of field play. So not the greatest for showing off all the detail on the ingredients, but just to show you that depth of field, it's incredible. Now here's another one. Just look at that pepperoni. This had pineapple on it, I think, also. I don't know what this one was called, but you could just see the pesto. I mean, this lens really makes stuff shine, in my opinion. Now here's just another snapshot. Here's one of this Meat Lovers. I think this is actually, I got a slice of this pie. It was very, very good. Now here's one I really liked of the garlic knots they have here, and they look like biscuits, but just look at that. I mean, incredible detail and quality. Then they had some empanadas here as well, which looked delicious. And I just love how the foreground renders. You could see there the foreground and the background. The separation is just off the charts, really isolating the subject. Now I stopped it down to f4 here to show you what a little more depth of field looks like. So now at f4 you can see there's a lot more in sharpness, or in detail, let's say, in focus. Still very narrow depth of field, but there's a lot more in focus at f4. Now here's another one from the pizza shop. This is at f1.8. I just like the way this sign looks, and I just love the way that this glass counter renders, and then the background rendering. I mean, this sign just pops off the screen. Very, very cool. Now, you guys know I'm a kind of half foodie here, so I love food. It is what it is. You can see how fat I am. So anyways, keeping on the food topic, I went to Holy Dog over in Middletown, New York. It's my favorite hot dog / whatever sausage place, I guess. And I mean, they just have the greatest stuff here. So I got the girlfriend treatment. Absolutely love it. And you can see this jar of jalapenos he's got here. Let's look at that. And there's a bright window behind it, and you can see the rendering is just absolutely perfect. Now, he was giving away cups of soup while I was waiting for my food. He had like a chicken noodle here. It was fantastic. That's what that was. And here is the owner. I wish I knew his name. I can't remember him, but he's such a cool dude. He's such a character. And just look at that incredible sharpness this lens offers. I mean, it is remarkable. And here he is cooking my food, and I put the, the counter in the foreground there to give you some of that depth. And here's my actual food. You could see here the girlfriend treatment. I focused on the center area. And then here I just focused on the front so you can get a better look at the chili and so forth. Now, I actually made a Oklahoma smash burger, I call it, and I really like onions well done, like when they're crispy like this. I know they look burnt, but I actually like them like that. They taste so good. So they're only burnt like that on the edges, but this is like 2 patties. I made a little burger, and you can see just how remarkable this looks. I used the brioche bun, which is super flavorful. Definitely not good for you, but flavorful. Now, I had to get a couple of sample portraits other than the crappy ones you saw of me, so I asked Jace to pose, and it's freezing outside right now, so trying to get portraits of people's not exactly easy, but I got a couple of snapshots of Jace here in front of the Christmas tree, which I still haven't taken down. But you could see just how awesome this looks. The 3D pop is just remarkable, and these are RAW files. So this one I enhanced a little bit, you could see, with the sliders over here, and it came out absolutely awesome. Let me zoom in a little bit. Looks great. I really like the way that this renders. Now, here's one of Buddy laying on the couch. You can see how much bigger he is. He's getting huge now. He's like almost a full-grown dog at this point. He's doing great. Now, here's just a landscape shot. Now, I was shooting through some branches, and normally this shot kind of looks terrible because there's all these branches in front, kind of ruins the view. But at f1.8, with a lens like this, they blur out enough where you could still get a pretty darn good landscape shot, through stuff. This, unfortunately, was one of the only examples I got here. Now, here's my four-wheeler that just got stolen, unfortunately. I absolutely love this machine. It was at the shop getting some maintenance done, and it got stolen from the shop, so I'm kind of screwed right now, to be honest with you. I have to get a new one because I use it to plow. There she is. Here's just a picture of a cat, neighbor's cat on the railing. Here's another one. I just wanted to show you this one because the trees in the foreground, you can see how blurry they are. And then, you know, of course, the quad tacks up nice and sharp. Now, I made some Will You Marry Me Chicken, it's called. If you search YouTube, you'll see there's tons of videos on this, on different ways to make it. So I watched Sam the Cooking Guy. I love that guy. And I made the chicken, and you can see here how incredible this looks. I have some video footage as well. Came out so good. And there it is, plated. And just the detail, color, clarity, sharpness, depth of field. I mean, it looks really awesome. You can actually see the steam coming off it a little bit here as well. So Layla made some eggs the other day. I just took a couple of snapshots here. You could see just how good these look. Again, the depth of field is so narrow, but you can see all that crispy bread and everything else, the salt and pepper. And then behind it is a fruit bowl. That's what that is. You can see I focused on the background here. You can see the fruit, strawberries and stuff. So because it was so cold out and it's hard to find portrait subjects, I went over to my metal friends. So this is like backlit a little bit. You can see the light is coming from the other side. This just renders incredible. And this is at f4. So you can see there's plenty of background separation even at f4. And I just wanted a little bit more depth of field for these shots because the metal has so much detail. I just wanted to capture more than the f1.8 like sliver would capture. So that's why I stopped it down to f4. And even at f4, you could see it's only a couple of inches of depth of field play. Now here's another one looking at the guitar with the guy playing the trumpet in the background there. Here's another shot. Now here's one looking through and you can see the guy in the background on the saxophone, not the trumpet, but I wanted to show you the foreground out of focus area, how good this looks. And this is at f4. So you can imagine if you're in a crowd of people or at a wedding or something like that, you're gonna get killer separation and depth of field play like this. So here's one more. And there's one of the saxophone, and there's one of the guitar. So you can just see that depth of field play. Now shooting into the sun here, we got a little bit of flaring you can see on the bottom. But you can see that overall the contrast and flaring is very well controlled. It didn't lose like as much as I was thinking it might. And that makes sense because this is really, really high quality lens. Now looking at my hat here, I just wanted to show you the detail on the fabric because it's very fine detail. And you could just see, I mean, absolutely remarkable how the detail, you know, is just all there, no fringing at all. Here's another one. This is just one of those chocolate candies. And here's one of Buddy, just playing around with him. A couple more candy shots, a few more snapshots of Buddy. Here's Buddy's foot. Now here's Buddy's ball that he's currently destroying. So I'm gonna have to throw this away pretty soon. Now I made some incredible roasted potatoes the other day and man, did they come out good. So this is what they look like. I have some video footage of them cooking, but the final result is right here, and man, they were unbelievable. They really were. They took a lot of time and effort to make, but it was worth the effort. And here's just a couple more cute shots of Buddy on the way out here of the real world photos. And you can see just raw straight off the camera. This is at ISO 10,000, f4. Looks absolutely remarkable. Now when it comes to the lab testing, I just wanted to show you the minimum focus shots first. So right here we got minimum focus, so that's 72 centimeters. And here's f1.8, here's f2.8, here's f4, here's f5.6, f8, f11, and f16. So that is what the minimum focus distance looks like, and you can just see the background renders to that. Now if I focus on the background, that's what it looks like. There it is back on the quarter. Now, if we go to just the lab scene itself for those super pixel peepers out there, if we zoom in here, you can see the sharpness is absolutely remarkable, corner to corner. Very, very sharp. There's like no distortion on this lens or vignetting either. So here's f1.8, here's f2.8, and you can see there's like almost no contrast lost at f1.8 versus 2.8. You could see when you go from one to the other. Normally you'll see the contrast like come up and the sharpness tack up. This like looks almost the same from f1.8 to 2.8, which is remarkable. I definitely expected there to be a noticeable difference here, but it's just off the charts how sharp and contrasty and punchy this lens is. It honestly is, it's like comparable to the GM lens. It's that good. All right, so I just set this scene up really quick to show you, again, just incredible, like the telephoto compression you can get and background separation. So especially when comparing 85 to 135, because you think 85 is fantastic lens for portraits and it gives you a lot of separation, but it doesn't even compare to a 135. And that's what I did here. I just wanted to illustrate that for you very clearly. So this is 135 at f1.8. This is 135 at f2.8. Now look, here's 85 millimeter. And this is at the same distance. So 85 versus 135. So you can see there the difference. That's as close as I can get with the 85 millimeter due to the minimum focus distance. And that's the Sony, which has a really good minimum focus distance. And then the 135. So they're just not even comparable. And that's what you can expect with a lens like this. So that's why portraits just pop and subjects just stand out. And again, in 85 millimeter, subjects pop and stand out. If you watch my 85 millimeter lens comparison review I did a couple months ago, that is a fantastic option as well for portraits and all sorts of stuff like this. But a 135 is just another level higher. And, you know, again, with that comes a little bit more technical difficulty, but it is worth it for sure. All right, guys, so at the end of the day, is a 135 millimeter lens for you? Let me know in the comments below. Like I said, it is definitely more challenging. It's one of the harder lenses to use. I enjoy the challenge of, you know, using different optics and stuff. And the 135 is one of the best portrait lenses I've ever used. Another really fun lens I used was the Sigma 105mm f1.4, which I reviewed here. That lens is just too big and heavy though for any kind of practical use. So, you know, it is what it is, but it can give you incredible results that are just like magical. So, you know, this one is more usable and you can still get incredibly magic results. And, you know, for the money, it's a really good option. Please don't forget, my affiliate links are below in the description area, and I have a discount code for you as well where you can save 8% on your Viltrox lens purchases. Thank you very much for that. I will catch up with you next time. All right, guys, take care.